Alright, how's it going, guys? So I wanted to make an official video kind of talking about the new car that I bought. I mentioned it on Instagram, and I think in my last video I mentioned that I was looking at buying a car. Well, I finally purchased one, and I've been honestly really happy with my purchase for quite a few different reasons. Mainly, you know, obviously I wasn't looking for another expensive car. I wasn't looking to go out and buy a Mercedes or BMW or something really nice because I didn't need something really nice. I have the GTR, and the GTR is a really comfortable daily. But for one, I needed a car that accomplished the goal of getting me from point A to point B when I don't have the GTR, because the GTR is still not done. They have, I believe, all the money to be able to purchase all the parts and do all the repairs, but it will still likely be a little while before I get that car back. And so I'm moving up to the Puyallup, Washington, Seattle area in this weekend, actually. So in 2 or 3 days, depending on a couple different factors. And I'll need a car to get me to work because I'm not working from home when I'm living there. And then also I'll need a car to drive to the grocery store and stuff like that. So I needed a car that can get me from point A to point B relatively comfortably. But I also was hoping to get something with decent gas mileage, because then I could buy some, or spend a little bit less on gas than what I would be if I was driving a car that got 10, 15 miles per gallon. And so, I wanted something cheap, wanted something with good gas mileage. And then my third goal, which my mom thought I was stupid for, but I thought it was a cool idea, was I wanted to get something manual. So I was essentially restricting my search to cars that were under 10 grand that were manual. And one car that I spotted that I thought looked like a really cool deal at first was a 2008 Audi S5 6-speed manual transmission car. It was selling for $7,900 or something along those lines up in the Washington area. And so I actually went and took a look at it when I was picking up my keys last Friday, and the battery had died, so I wasn't able to test drive it or anything, but it looked cool. It looked really good from the outside. The interior looked good. No accidents reported, no damage to the outside or anything. And so I thought it was a pretty cool deal to be able to buy an Audi S5. The S models are the higher end models for the Audis, and so that would be really cool. It wasn't even like an A5 or anything, and it was marked as a really good deal. But I posted a story about it, asking if people thought it was a good idea, and the one thing that multiple people contacted me about is the fact that it had 150,000 miles on it, which, even though the Audi engines are relatively reliable, apparently the 4.2 liter V8, which is the one that came in the Audi S5, is very problematic. And so the fact that that engine is problematic plus 150,000 miles, I would likely be putting 8 grand into the car in the first year or two of ownership. So it would basically be a really cheap car, a really good deal for the car itself, but then it would be a money pit after that. And I'm not looking for that. So what I ended up getting, I'll show you in a second, is a 2014 Mitsubishi Lancer Es with a 5-speed manual transmission, and I believe it has 73,000 miles on it, which might sound pretty high, but I got it for a really good deal, and I'm really happy with it because what I was reading online is that these cars are really reliable. They're really good cars, and so this purchase, I ended up spending, so the other cool thing about it is it was listed at $8,000, basically like right under $8,000 for the car. And the $8,000 price was already marked by multiple websites as $1,000 below what it should be at. So basically it was $1,000 into the great deal category. So $1,000 great deal. And then on top of that, what I was really proud about was I did my first haggling for a car, and I was able to get them down $500. So basically I got this $1,500 below where multiple websites said I should for the mileage and the year and everything like that. So I'm pretty happy about that. And let's go quickly take a look at the car, and so I can kind of show you what I bought. Okay, so here it is. I am sorry for the mess in the garage. This is my parents' garage. So yeah, there's a lot of extra stuff in here. They're actually in the process of moving pretty much everything from this house down to Bend in Central Oregon, where their other house is. So that's why there's kind of a mess here. But this is the car. This is a white 2014 Mitsubishi Lancer ES. It has the white honestly looks really good. It kind of looks yellow or orangish here because of the low quality light that's up there. But I promise you, when this thing is in the sun, it actually looks really good. It has really good white paint. There are a few little like paint chips like here and here. There's also a couple things on the side, but there's no major damage. There's nothing that really jumps out. It's a really clean car, looks really good. I'm not a fan of the wheels, obviously, but I don't think anyone would be a fan of these wheels. And then the back end, it looks really good. Looks really good for what I got it for. So ended up paying $7,500 and got this. A little bit of damage there as well. This thing's obviously been driven. The interior looks really solid. There's a little bit of damage down there, or like, basically I kind of just need to buy a floor mat. That's pretty much it with that. The seats look good. Steering wheel looks good. Shift knob, although looking very, very old and worn, it's in good shape. And I'll probably buy a new shift knob because these aren't terribly expensive. Decent interior out there. Back seats are fairly comfortable, nothing to write home about, but it's better than the GTR. And so I can fit people back here. I can fit stuff back there if I need to. All in all, it's really comfortable. So I only have a couple complaints about this. Number one, and this isn't too much of a complaint as much as me kind of saying there's something a little weird here, is, oh, and my cat came out in the garage. Hey, Amber. So the first thing is tint. So this is my first car that I've ever purchased that came with tint. I don't have a problem with it. I'm not entirely sure if this is legal or not. It actually looks way lighter in the camera than it does in person. This looks kind of dark. So I do want to check to see if this is legal limit or not. I might have it removed if it's not. But okay, it came with tint. No big deal. The weird thing about it is this window came with tint, and both rear windows came with tint, but the passenger window came without tint. It's the only window on the entire car, besides the windshield obviously, that doesn't have tint. So for some reason, 3 of the 4 windows have tint. I don't know, that's kind of weird. I might end up just removing it because I don't really care about tint. I don't know if you guys noticed, my GTR is a fishbowl. I mean, it's no tint at all. So we'll see. I might test and see what this is. If this is Oregon legal limit, then I might just get tint, the Oregon legal limit tint on the passenger side as well to match it. That way it doesn't look too weird, but Oregon legal limit is fine. Tinting one window shouldn't really be that expensive either, so we'll see what happens there. But that was one thing. Another thing that was kind of weird, and I don't know what the issue is here, but it has the estimated miles till empty. But what was weird is when they gave me the car, so when I test drove it, it said 100 miles till empty. And there was less than a half a tank of gas. I think there was a third of a tank of gas or something like that. But it said 100 miles till empty. And then when I bought the car, they filled it up to about 2/3 of a tank. So it was well over half, and it still said 100 miles till empty, which was pretty weird. And then I kept driving and it stayed at 100 miles till empty through the test drive. Then I bought it, took it home. The entire 15-mile drive home stayed on 100 miles till empty, and then parked it. Everything was fine. Then the next day, I think I drove it to the grocery store or something like that. Still 100 miles till empty. And then when I got home, it jumped up to 200 miles till empty. I don't really know what's going on there. The actual gauge itself for how much fuel is left seems to be accurate, which is cool. That's fine. And that's really all that matters. I don't pay attention too much to the miles till empty part, so that doesn't really matter. But it's just kind of weird, thing. I didn't really care. So, paint chips, weird tint thing, gas level, not a big deal. The audio system actually, so I didn't realize that it had Bluetooth in it, which is pretty cool. So I paired up my phone. The radio quality is terrible, but when I paired up the Bluetooth, the speakers in this are actually pretty high quality for how much I paid for this. And so I was pretty excited about that. Was able to pair my phone with Bluetooth. I also went through the list, and this was kind of funny, having it list off, because it's all through voice commands. That's how I connected it to Bluetooth. It listed off all the phones that were currently connected because I was maxed out on devices. And apparently some girl named Madison owned this car before me. I don't know if she was the most recent one before me, but she owned the car before me. And she paired up like 5 different phones with it, including one with her boyfriend, I think. Because it was like, somebody loves Madison, which was kind of interesting. So, you know, that was kind of a weird thing, how one person paired up like 5 different phones and then her boyfriend did. But, you know, it seemed to be well maintained. There's no warranty on the car, but it is one of those things where the dealership that I bought it from, they're a high quality dealership. I mean, they're selling a GTR there right now. They're selling an R8. They're selling multiple Porsche GT3 RSs. You know, they sell really high-end cars. This was definitely one of the lower end cars that they're selling, but they say they stand behind the cars that they sell. So whereas I don't have an official warranty on the car, if something breaks, they are willing to, they said that if something does break, like the engine or transmission or something, they'll help me out with that. I don't know what that means, but they did seem like good people. The dealership got really good reviews online. They sell really high-end cars, and so, you know, something like this, really, I think they would probably be pretty helpful with it. So I'm not too terribly worried about it. Plus, they offered me an extended warranty, but it was like $3,000 extra, which is like 50% of the value of the car itself. No way in hell I did that. So we'll see how this thing lasts. I'm not gonna be driving it too terribly much. It is really fun to drive the manual transmission, but I'm really I need to take it to the dealership today because the key fob they gave me was dead. So they're buying me a battery replacement. I'm waiting for the techs to actually go do that. And then I will have to drive this up to Washington on probably Saturday or Sunday, depending on when my stuff arrives. And so then I'll put a decent amount of miles on it, 200 or so. But yeah, it is what it is. It works for now. I'm really happy with the purchase. I think it turned out, I think it's a really good deal. And it should be pretty cheap to maintain based on, after I posted it, a bunch of people messaged me saying that, it was a really good choice, good gas mileage, cheap gas, I can use the regular, and it's cheap to maintain. So cheap oil changes, brakes and pads and rotors, and brake pads and rotors are cheap. If there's engine problems, it's relatively cheap. Transmission, with the 2014s, apparently, if it's an automatic, it has worse transmission and more transmission issues, but because it's a manual, the transmission is actually pretty strong on that. Clutch isn't terribly expensive either, so I won't be spending a lot of money on this car if there's an issue. And the burning question in everyone's heads apparently is, will I modify it? Probably not. And this is predicated on a couple things. Number one, I might try to make it a tiny bit louder because right now it sounds like a vacuum when I start it and when I rev it. And so I like cars to be a little bit louder. Obviously it's a 4-cylinder engine, and so I don't want to straight pipe it because then it'll sound like a racer car. And that's not what I'm going for. When I say I want it to be louder, I don't mean where I'm gonna wake up my neighbors. I mean just where I can hear the car a tiny bit, where it's not full throttle, 8,000 RPM, I barely hear my car. So I'm kind of looking at what possibly can be done, maybe just buying a slightly more expensive exhaust system that makes it just sound a little louder. Not super loud. I'm not going for ricer. I'm not going for a, what's it called, burble tune or anything like that. I'm staying away from all that shit. Just possibly going slightly louder. For the other stuff, if there's something that I feel like would be a really cheap modification that makes the car more efficient, like let's say a tune on the car is really cheap, maybe I'll do something like that. Just throw a tune on the car so that way it's more efficient, gets a little bit more power without throwing a bunch of money and stuff into the car, just keeping it relatively simple. There is, however, the possibility if I keep this thing long term and I get into a really good financial situation, or something happens down the road, I could absolutely see myself building this into a sleeper. I think it would be funny to take something that looks relatively close to this to the track and running like an 11-second pass. Because if I pulled up in this, obviously I'd have to get way fatter tires because I think these are like 205s or some shit. But it would be really funny to blow people's minds with a sleeper Lancer. because I wouldn't rice it out and make it look fast. I would keep it looking relatively close to this with fatter tires and then just, you know, run really fast. So that's always a possibility. But as always, this isn't a car that I know well. This isn't a car that I have experience with. I don't know the builds on this. I was looking up a couple parts, but I didn't really look into anything. So if anyone has any advice on something I can do to this car that's cheap and that's helpful, let me know down in the comment section below. Obviously, I'm not gonna twin turbo the car. I'm not going to put some super fancy exhaust system on the car. I'm not gonna throw full bolt-ons in the car. I'm not gonna switch it to E85 or anything like that right now. I would be willing to do something small that helps out the car a little bit. You know, it is a little torquey. That is actually one thing. So I don't know if this is a problem with the car or if this is how it's supposed to be. And you can answer, like, you can tell me if I'm being stupid or not. So usually what happens when I'm driving a manual car, so the 3 manual cars that I've driven are a Mini Cooper, a Corvette, oh sorry, 4. Mini Cooper, Corvette, 5. Mini Cooper, Corvette, Mustang, Audi R8, and then this car. In all the other cars except for this one, if you are in first gear or second gear or whatever gear, and you're at, let's say, right before red line, and then you shift. So let's say you're at 6,000 RPM and then you shift up. Then it usually drops to like 4,000 or 5,000. It drops 1,000 to 2,000 RPM usually. In this car, what's really weird is, in first gear, it has actually a fair amount of torque. It's pretty fun if I'm in first gear and I floor it. But if I redline, get to 7,000 RPM and then I shift up, it drops to like 2,000. And then the rest of the gears are fine, keeping pretty consistent. So if I'm in second gear and I'm really high RPM, it's not as torquey as first gear, but if I shift up, it only drops 1,000 or 2,000 RPM, and so then I'm continuing that torque. But if I were to take this to the drag strip right now and launch the, well, I wouldn't launch it very hard, but you know, launch the car, I'd be in first gear, I'd be flying, have a pretty good 60 foot, but then as soon as I need to shift into second gear, I'd lose all that power because it drops to like 2,500 RPM, and then just gotta wait for it to build back up. I don't know if that's the car or me being stupid or whatnot, but that's like really my only issue. I'm hoping to kind of fix that so that way it doesn't, you know, I can cleanly shift from first to second and not lose all that power. But yeah, so this is the car that I got. 7,500 bucks for this thing, and honestly, it's really a lot of fun. I hope to keep it long term, good gas mileage and everything. So that's about it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to comment, rate, and subscribe, and as always, have a nice day.